Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Uh, I just would like to quickly go through the format. Today, we will have Dr. Vidhya speak with us. Manisa will introduce her in just a minute. I'd like to tell you that this is live on YouTube as well. I have pasted the link on the chat box. And if you have friends you would like to share this with, kindly go ahead and do that. At the end of the session, after Dr. Vidhya speaks, we will share with you a Google form and you can ask your questions to Dr. Vidhya through the Google form. You can ask as many questions as you want. You can give multiple questions after submitting one after the other. Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Over to you, Manisa.
Okay. Good morning to all of you, and it's a pleasure to introduce Dr. Vidhya Gokul to you. She is going to speak to us on deciphering COVID-19 for tomorrow world leaders. It's a very important topic and broader perspective. So let me just say that Dr. Vidhya Gokul is a pediatrician and a co-founder of a GV clinic in Tiruvanmayu. And she is especially interested in all aspects of child development. And she has published several children's books, and I'm also anxious to look at some of them, and are available on Kindle Amazon. She also conducts a book reading club called a Stepping Stone Club. And this is free of cost for children in the age group of 3 and 10. And many of you who have known children or your own children, they might be interested in this, and they learn science, history, and language through stories. That's a wonderful idea. She is also conducting a preschool or co-founding a preschool called Padihal in Thiruvanmayu. Over to you, Dr. Vidhya.
Thank you so much, sir. That was a wonderful introduction. So, like sir said, I'm Dr. Vidya, and I have a clinic called GV Clinic in Tiruvanmiyur, and I also consult at ProMed Hospital, which is in Kottivakam. I am founding a course, play school. It's not Padigal, a small, it's Padikal, which means stepping stone, translated in Tamil. So, before we start this presentation, I'd like to offer my condolences to, I know that some of you might have lost a family or dear loved ones to COVID. And I'd like to extend my condolences to you. And we'll move on to the presentation now. All right. All right. So, yes. So when I was asked to choose a topic, a title for this presentation, I said I'll say deciphering COVID-19 for the world leaders of tomorrow. Is the reason behind the title. It's mainly because I was told that this speech is going to be mostly to high schoolers and 11th and 12th standard students. Now I know that there is a broader crowd, and I said tomorrow's world leaders because each one of you will probably be a leader in just a few years from now. And when I say leader, a world leader doesn't necessarily have to be the head of a country like our Prime Minister Modi or Donald Trump. He or she could be, a manager at a bank. You could be the principal of a school. You could be the an owner of a bakery. You could be a homemaker. And in all those positions are leadership positions where you are going to determine the lives of people around you. And and the most important thing for a leader to do is when you are faced with a problem, you need to look at the broader perspective of the problem so you can do justice to it. So let's move on. Now, to understand COVID 19 and Corona as such, you need to understand the story behind Corona. Just as if you walk to the canteen and you saw your friend getting slapped by his girlfriend, you're not going to jump into conclusions. You want to know what exactly happened, because only then can you understand the problem between them. Similarly, to understand Corona, let's look at the story of Corona. And for that, we need to get to the very, very beginning of all of this. So look at this slide. Corona is a zoonotic infection, which means it's transmitted to human. It got transmitted to a human from an animal. So the most recent common ancestor of all coronaviruses is estimated to have existed as recently as 8,000 years ago, plus 2. So when you say 8,000 BCE, it's 10,000 years ago. And some scientists believe that corona started evolving about 55 million years ago. So it's been there for millions of years. And that's just about the time when bats and many of our avian species, our birds, all of them also evolved. So they all evolved at the same time. Now, the thing about virus is this: viruses cannot live outside a body, outside a human body, an animal body. So they need a living thing for them to become alive and start reproducing and infecting. So outside the body, it's not really alive. So when the bats and when the coronavirus all evolved at the same time, it's natural that the virus assume that it could make the bat its host. Now, this is a hypothesis, of course. So this is where it all started, and ever since, coronavirus has been around. There are like a lot of species of coronaviruses that also infect human beings, and we've known that for a long time. So even as a first year student, when we open our textbooks and learn what is the most common cause for cold or cough or respiratory infection in a human being, one of the first causes would be coronavirus, and that would be right there on top. It's just that none of you had heard about the term before. So the coronavirus first started infecting humans, but that was just a cold or cough. We've seen in the recent times a lot of the new strains of coronaviruses are starting to become stronger and stronger. So they all evolved. First, they were in bats. When they were in bats, they needed so they didn't have the power to infect other animals. Slowly, over years or over centuries, over decades, whatever time it took that time for the corona to gain power and to keep on evolving into a strain that could affect our animals like pigs and all this cattle that human beings are raising. So these are farm animals, right? They're not wild animals. After that, the coronavirus again evolved to an extent that now it's able to jump from these pigs into human beings. Now, coronavirus is a fan of Rajinikanth, and it believes that Maruvadellam Uyirodu Maradadallam Mannodu. That's what Rajinikanth said, right? And it's so true. Even for us humans, we've been evolving to get stronger. And that is the rule of nature. So does coronavirus. If you look at this picture, so this is the coronavirus, and it's saying I need someone to live on. Like I told you, it can only live in another living thing. And from there, see, it's jumped to bats. So it had the power to infect bats, and then it gained more power to infect these kind of animals. And these are the kind of animals that human beings come in contact with, right? So humans don't directly go in contact with bats on an everyday basis, but they are in contact with pigs and camels and cats and all of mongoose. Sorry, I think there's mongoose and all of these animals. And just as you don't have to eat each other to get corona, you just breathe in the infection, don't we? Similarly, when we handle these animals, when the farmers are handling these animals, transporting them, coming in contact with them, feeding them, it's hypothesized now that in Wuhan, one such person has probably contracted corona from such an animal, and then he has given it to other human beings. So this is a very vivid picture of the coronavirus. I'm sure all of you have already seen this on television and WhatsApp and all of that. So this is what we're talking about. A virus is basically just a really, really, really tiny thing that is made up of different sorts of proteins. So this is all it is. So when I say different strains of coronavirus, the one that used to affect bats and now it's affecting humans, and even in that the coronavirus, that the current coronavirus is different from the other coronaviruses that didn't cause deadly infections. Remember, I told you about all of that. The difference is just this: they basically look like this. Maybe a small alteration in the E protein, or a small alteration in the S protein, or a small alteration in the M protein is all that it takes to become deadlier and to affect more number of species. This picture does look complicated, so forget about the rest of the picture. Just look at this red structure over here. So that is a key. So these proteins that the coronavirus have, they all have a sort of a key, and this key is not all the same. Different kinds of coronaviruses have different keys, and those keys are very specific. This COVID-19, this corona virus particularly, that's caused COVID-19, has the key needed to unlock. See, this is a lock in the human lung, the cell in the human lung. So the cells in our human lung has a kind of lock, and the coronavirus has the exact key to open that lock. And once it opens that lock, it's very easy from there. It enters our lung and it evades our lung cells and starts infecting us. I have a short video after this. In that video, you will be able to see more clearly what I'm talking about.
Viruses have lived on Earth for billions of years, mutating and adapting. They've been around longer than animals, longer than plants. They're neither dead nor alive. They're active inside a living thing, powerless out in the open, but rise again in another host. Their goal is simple: to persist. They infect our cells, then replicate and spread. Smallpox, AIDS, polio, these are just some of the diseases caused by viruses that have ravaged humankind. Now we're facing a new disease, COVID-19, caused by the coronavirus. Our bodies and communities are struggling to fight back. An individual virus particle, or virion, is invisible to our naked eye. It takes roughly 1,000 coronavirus particles to span the width of a human hair. It travels lightly. A virus is just genetic material wrapped in a layer of protein and fat, spreading through the air in moisture droplets or on surfaces, finding its way into our eyes, noses, and mouths. Inside, the coronavirus hijacks the cells in the back of our nose, replicating and spreading downward, infecting healthy cells along the way. Some viruses, like the ones that cause the common cold, infect our nose and throat. Others can cause viral pneumonia. That usually infects smaller areas of just one lung. The coronavirus packs a vicious double punch. It can infect the entire respiratory system, all the way down to millions of tiny air sacs called alveoli. Here is a single healthy alveolus. Right next to it, there's a thin blood vessel, a capillary. This is where one of our most life-sustaining exchanges happens. The alveolus brings oxygen into the bloodstream and excretes carbon dioxide. But the virus disrupts this whole process. This immune cell, a macrophage, attacks it. Sometimes it defeats the virus. If our body needs more help, it recruits more immune cells, like these neutrophils. While they're attacking the virus, they can end up injuring the alveolus too, breaking down its walls. Fluid rushes from the blood vessels into the alveolus, filling it up and blocking the exchange of oxygen. Now it's much harder to breathe. It's ultimately this two-pronged attack that makes the coronavirus so deadly. The attack from the virus and our immune system's explosive response. All this can lead to acute respiratory distress syndrome, what most people with COVID-19 die from. Viruses don't benefit from wiping out their hosts. They rely on us so they can exist. To ultimately beat this coronavirus, we'll need an antiviral medication or immunity through a vaccine. The impact from this pandemic has been devastating, but we can learn from it so we can stay a step ahead of the next one, because there are almost certainly more to come.
That video ended on a very threatening note. Okay. So we were here. So just to summarize, now we know that coronaviruses have been around for about millions of years now. There are many types of coronaviruses. Some of them just cause cold or a cough. And recent strains, nowadays we're seeing coronaviruses that cause lung infections, and they're much more severe. And we've also seen that in 2019, the human race has been exposed to the most new variant of coronavirus, and which we are struggling with right now. So let's move on. So I told you there are many types of coronaviruses, right? Like probably, okay, so probably post, the 2000s, we didn't have such deadly types of coronaviruses. But if you look at this table, it shows you the SARS-CoV-2. Okay, so this was an epidemic that happened in 2002. Before we move on, I want to tell you the difference between the word epidemic and the word pandemic. Epidemic is when we have a disease outbreak, but it's confined to probably just your state or your country. It's called a pandemic when there is a disease outbreak which started probably somewhere, and that disease has now spread across continents to almost all over the world. So, SARS-CoV-2 in 2002 was just an epidemic. And look at this 9.5%. This is the case fatality rate, which means if 100 people in 2002 got SARS-CoV-2, 9.5% of them would die out of the illness. Look at the last column, MERS. M stands for Mediterranean. So MERS is also another type of coronavirus attack, and that happened in 2012, 15, and 18. And again, all three of them were epidemics, and this is deadly. If 100 people contracted, MERS infections, 37% of them would die. But then let's look at the SARS-CoV-2, which is the infamous slash famous COVID-19. In 2019 is when we've seen this outbreak, and this is a pandemic, which means it spread over continents. If 100 people contracted SARS-CoV-2, which is COVID-19, 2.5% of them would die. When you look at the numbers, it's actually a very small number compared to MERS and SARS-CoV-2, which are also coronavirus attacks that happened in 2002, 12, 15, and 18, respectively. But then you see all the fuss being made about it. So your next question naturally is if coronavirus has been around for centuries, and if it has a very small case fatality rate comparatively, which is only 2.5, what's all this fuss about now? What's the big deal is your next question. Well, the big deal is this. Again, COVID takes Rajinikanth very seriously, and he says, "Na later vandalum latest varu." So this particular strain of corona is deadly because one, it is resistant, just like our new latest cell phones are water resistant. This coronavirus is weather resistant. It doesn't care about whether it's cold, whether it's hot, whether it's a rainy place that it's in, or a dry place. It is weather resistant, and it's come at a time when the world is so well connected. Today, hundreds and thousands of flights fly in and out of every country and every state in that country, and the world is a very well connected place. Kanyan Pungundrana's dream of Yadu Mure Yavaram Kele, it has now come true like 2000 years later. We are one single unit, the whole world. So that could be one of the reasons. So all these are less speculations in the scientific world. A second reason is also where it started. It started in a place called Wuhan, which is a bustling place, and also during the Chinese New Year, when millions of people were going in and out of China, and particularly in and out of Wuhan. So I think it was a good time for for Corona, that way to just start there. So it could travel along with these people to all the rest of the country, rest of the world, and infect all of us. This picture is very sad to me, and this is one of the reasons why COVID-19 is a disaster of magnitudes. The reason is this: overcrowding. When Corona struck, it didn't go, one city at a time. It didn't go one street at a time. It went everywhere all at once. Imagine if you are listening to this from a smaller town, and say your town has only two hospitals, and those two hospitals have maybe 200 beds each, and each hospital is being taken care of 20 doctors. Imagine 2,000 people fighting for those 200 beds. See, corona is a virus, just like polio, just like chickenpox, just like any other virus. It's not something new to the medical community. We can treat all of this to some extent, to a very good extent. But the problem is this: if 1,000 people are going to be fighting for 10 or 20 beds, and if out of the 20 doctors working in that hospital, 10 of them themselves are going to be sick from corona, the onus falls on that those 10 doctors to treat those 2000 patients. At any other point in time, say for example a year ago, if you had got a similar infection, a similar lung problem, the chances of that person surviving could have been really good as compared to someone with even a moderate corona without medical attention is prone to get sick. They are prone to get sick, and the chances of survival is so low. And that's the human tragedy over here. So this is Bill Gates. I'm sure most of you know. If anybody don't know who Bill Gates is, please go look him up. So he says the worst pandemic in modern history was the Spanish flu of 1918, which killed tens of millions of people. Today, with how interconnected the world is, it would spread faster. Now, Bill Gates didn't say this in 2019 after the corona pandemic happened. He said this way before. Not just Bill Gates, many of the brightest minds, scientists, philanthropists like him, and great scientists and doctors working for the World Health Organization anticipated this. We knew, see, Corona had the right combination. Deadly enough, can stay in any weather, started off in Wuhan, during the Chinese New Year. So all these combinations together made it a pandemic. So these guys were smart enough to think about this even before anything even started. That's the thing about great minds, isn't it? We anticipate a problem and we want to find a solution even before it can happen, but unfortunately it didn't happen. They wanted to find a solution, but it wasn't fast enough, and we all know what happened. So this is Sir David Attenborough. If you've all listened to documentaries on the BBC, you know that soothing lovely voice behind it, that belongs to him. So he made a documentary recently. It is called A Life on Earth. It's on Netflix. It is very educative, so please go watch it. He talks about how human beings are literally evading into the natural world, and we are taking more and more and more of the wild, and that there's so little left of the wild. So a lot of scientists are again hypothesizing that when human beings come in contact with the wild, not just us, we're taking our villages there, we're taking our cattle there, we're taking our cows there, our chickens and ducks there, and in China they take the pigs there also. It's so easy for us and our cattle to contract infections from these wild creatures like bats, and that's exactly what has probably happened now. So now that we know where the problems come from, to name the problem, so we're saying the problem could be that we are evading more into the wild, we're coming more in contact with the diseases that the wild animals carry, and then all that could lead to possibilities of pandemics. So obvious question is it possible to eliminate the root cause? And how do we eliminate the root cause? Well, if you ask me personally, maybe we can, maybe we can't, because let's face it, human beings have been in contact with these wild creatures, not just now, ever since we were hunter gatherers. We had our villages in the middle of the forest, and at any given point in time, the people living at the peripheries of any country or any place are in contact with the wild, right? But that's my opinion. But I know one thing for sure, that there definitely is a way to control the problem. So how do we control the problem? Well, the solution is thankfully way more simpler than the problem itself. One is, of course, learning to live with it. So when I say learning to live with it, a lot of people, misunderstand that I mean learning to die with it. No, I'm not saying, well, learn and get used to your social distancing, get used to not going to schools, get used to never being able to attend a wedding. That's not what I mean. I mean, get used to going to your schools, going to your colleges, going to your malls, and coming out without an infection. How do we do that? So that is how a progressive mind should think. Sorry. So there are obviously two approaches as it is to any problem. Thinking about the past, learning lessons from the past, and then moving on, think about the future and what we'll do after this. So preventing further pandemics is one thing we definitely need to do. Second thing is, how do we handle this current situation? Well, yeah, one approach is what I said, let the wildlife be, is what some scientists believe. And the second thing, and I want you to focus on the second solution, it's so important, that's response to disease outbreak. This is what, remember the slide I showed about Bill Gates was talking about, is response to disease outbreak. So again, this is Bill Gates again. He says the Ebola epidemic showed me that we are not ready for a serious epidemic. And he's talking about epidemic. Remember, just a small, just a small area that's been affected by a disease. He says the Ebola epidemic showed me that we're not ready for a serious epidemic, an epidemic that would be more infectious and would spread faster than Ebola did. So Bill Gates, this is again way back before COVID started. When he looked at the Ebola epidemic, he just didn't look at that. I told you, right? Great minds think beyond it. And he's saying, look, Ebola epidemic happened, and people are suffering. And he was dreading that a bigger epidemic or one that could spread to the world and create a pandemic might happen. And he analyzed and found out, not just him, mind you, like the WHO and all these great organizations found out that we are just not ready to handle. By we, I mean as governments, as a human race as such, we are not ready to handle any of that. And he was right. So remember I spoke about, so this slide, remember I spoke about response to disease outbreak, and I told you must focus on that. Let me give you examples of that. So this happened in China in October last month, and 5 or 6 people in this particular, in this particular place in China, it's called Qingdao. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that right. But anyway, 5 or 6 people tested positive for corona. You know what they did? And this is amazing to me. They locked down the whole place, the whole city. Within a matter of 5 days, they tested 9.4 millions of people. And you know why they did that? So that when there is a small outbreak, contain it and stop it then and there. Because the whole world doesn't have to suffer. If in their case, the whole country doesn't have to suffer. The whole of China doesn't have to go into a lockdown. Because let's face it, guys, millions and millions of people have lost their lives not only just to corona, but to all the steps that we've taken to contain the illness, including lockdown. In our own country, we saw millions of migrant laborers dying, and all of that. It's such a tragedy. So when there is a disease outbreak, we must look at controlling that then and there. We don't even have to look that far. Look at what happened in Kozhikode and Kerala. I'm this is our neighboring state, right? I'm so immensely proud of this. So this is a movie called Virus. Again, this is extremely educational because I have never in my life seen a movie talking about a disease or a hospital setup without dramatizing it. And this movie shows exactly what has happened in Kozhikode in 2018, if I'm not wrong, 2018, when there was a Nipah virus outbreak. Now, Nipah is a far more deadlier virus than coronavirus, right? Given a choice, I would any day take corona to Nipah. So an outbreak happened in this place in Kozhikode. Immediately, the health department and the government rushes to contact tracing. So this person had got the Nipah virus. Where did he get it from? Where did she get it from? And they find that out, and they immediately put all of them in isolation, treat them, give them the best medical care available, give the doctors PPEs. PPEs are the protective gear that doctors wear with the big helmet and the suit and all of that. I'm sure all of you know that by now. They gave them all of that and they contained it within Kozhikode. Imagine if it had spread to the rest of Kerala. Imagine if it had spread to the rest of the country. It would have been a bigger disaster. So now we're done about the outbreak response. So this slide basically talks about what we can do as a community together and what we can do as individuals, right? So we all always have two kind of responsibilities. We owe it to our community and we owe certain things to ourselves. So what can we do for the community? Yes, outbreak response and then investment in health and infrastructure. In our country, there are towns and villages that don't have the health infrastructure that cities like Chennai or Mumbai have. So if someone gets sick in a small city like Kalakurchi, they have to be referred to a bigger hospital in Salem. And if they have a more serious illness, then they're referred to a bigger hospital in Chennai. Imagine for that particular patient, the time that it takes is it could mean a death sentence. For some people, it could mean the difference between life or death. So we must think about all of that. So when we When we expect our governments to talk about many things, we must expect them also to talk about who's going to invest in more healthcare, who's going to invest in more infrastructure. Many of you people listening to this are children. I understand you're probably 17 or 8, 17 years of age. Next year you'll be 18 and you will have the power to vote in people. So you must ask them about things like this, and you must think about things like this. After all, we live in a democracy, and the government is by the people, of the people, for the people. So some of you might be politicians tomorrow. We need to think about these things. Let's move on to what you can do as as individuals. The first and the biggest point is, do not stigmatize. So just today, I saw a kid in my OPD, and she had a particular illness, and I wanted to do a HIV testing for her. But you know what the biggest problem is in telling the parent that HIV testing has to be done? Because in our country, diseases are stigmatized. TB is stigmatized. HIV is stigmatized. And corona is sadly stigmatized. When you make people ashamed of an illness, when you put blame on people for being sick, they are very apprehensive to come out with their illnesses. And if I don't test that child, imagine the child will, you know, can I do the best treatment for that child if the child is not willing to get tested? So that is what we're doing when we put stigma to a disease, when we attach stigma to a disease. It it is very difficult to give good treatment care to patients when they have diseases like HIV or in this case corona. So do not stigmatize is one. Second thing is coughing etiquette. Coughing etiquette, when you cough, a lot of us now we know it, but we didn't know this before, right? A lot of people didn't know this. Cough into your elbow or cough into your shirt like this. Don't cough into the air, and please don't cough into your hands, because then you're going to go and shake somebody's hand or touch somebody, and you're transferring that virus or bacteria from your hand to another person. So coughing etiquette is basically when you have to cough or sneeze into your elbow or into your shirt. Wearing masks in public places. Social distancing is so important. Isolate yourselves if you're sick so that you cannot give it to other people. Vaccinate yourselves. Vaccinate yourselves not just because you won't catch the infection. Yes, if you, for example, get a flu vaccine, you will not get flu. And if you don't get flu, you will not give flu to the people around you, because the person you're giving flu to could be a very old person, could be a grandmother or a grandfather, could be a newborn baby or a mother who's just given birth, or could be somebody who's fighting cancer or something like that, where the immunity is very low already. You might come out of it. So that is the bigger role of vaccination. Vaccination is not just to prevent the disease in you, but it is also to prevent the disease in people who are not strong enough to handle the disease when they encounter it. Usage of hand sanitizers, definitely yes. But what's more stronger than that is washing hands. I'll be talking to you about washing hands after this slide and the power of washing hands. But before that, just look at this slide. This is not the India we wish to see, right? We don't have to be pushing each other and falling on each other in order to get where we need to get to. This is a good example of social distancing and how we should be following standing in queues, and just the simple act of discipline can prevent diseases. Hand washing, again, coming back to hand washing is not just now, but it's historically known to have saved lives. I'm not exaggerating when I say saved lives. This is a story, not a story, it really did happen. So this is a true life incident, and this happened in Europe in the 1800s. Dr. Samuel Weiss, he was German doctor physician, and he used to conduct deliveries. And he noticed that in his hospital and in many hospitals likewise in Europe, after women gave birth, they would get some kind of a fever and they would die. So 15%, that is, if 100 women gave birth in their hospital, sometimes even 15 out of those 100 would die. That people were literally scared to come to hospitals and give birth. And he realized that the same women, when they gave birth at home or anywhere else, they were actually a little better. Not 15 out of 100 died, maybe a fewer died. And he was puzzled. He wanted to know why. So he started observing and researching about this, and he realized that the doctors, after these women would die, would take the dead body, the cadaver as we call it, and do an autopsy on the body to see what was wrong. And even in the middle of doing an autopsy, guys, so whatever you're doing, if there is a delivery and the woman is giving birth, the doctor has to rush to the spot, right? Or after the cadavers, after the biopsy, or I'm sorry, autopsy. Very sorry. After the autopsy, or even during, the autopsy session, if a woman was giving birth, these doctors were rushing there, and he found out that the women that they were attending to, now those women are also catching the weird fever, and they were also dying. And he also noticed that some of the people who were doing autopsies, the doctors, some of them were also catching the fever, and a few of them also died. So he noticed that there is a link between one woman dying and that woman causing the deaths of other people. Now, this is 1800s, guys. So this is before anybody knew anything about germs. This is before anybody even used soap. Where soap wasn't so popular back then. Doctors used to use like a chlorine in water to just to clean their hands. They didn't know about germs. They didn't know about antibiotics. They didn't know anything. Thankfully, Semmelweis was wise enough, pun intended. So anyway, Semmelweis was wise enough to notice a correlation between this, and he told his team, you know what, guys, let's try this. So we are doing autopsies and our hands are dirty. He uses the word dirty, not like, not contaminated, because he doesn't know about germs. He says our hands are dirty. Why don't we just wash it in a chlorine solution and then go for deliveries? And even when we do deliveries, let's wash our hands between, attending one woman to another woman, because he knows, right? This fever, the same fever is jumping from woman to woman, woman to woman. So he says, let's just wash our hands between conducting these deliveries. And they started doing that. And this is amazing. When they started doing that, from 15 out of 100 women after delivery who were dying, it became to less than two, sometimes even just 1 out of 100. So just hand washing can save lives. And this, we have historical evidence for that. So now, obviously, like, most of you are emotionally tired, and doctor, you've been bombarding us with all this bad news and how terrible everything is. Do you have any such thing as good news? Yes, there's good news. And I've seen this happening, and I can only speak for Chennai because I practice here. So I've seen this happening in our own city, where when all of this started, luckily for us, it started way after, it started in China. We had lessons to learn from there, and then it went to Italy. We had lessons to learn from there. So we had lessons to learn, and we have learned some lessons. So immediately after this came to India and this lockdown happened, hospitals rushed to make protocols like, when a person comes with cough, what do we do? If we don't suspect corona, then where do we put them? What kind of protective equipment should we give our doctors? How do we protect our doctors? Because we don't want to lose, soldiers. When a war is going on, the last thing you need is losing soldiers, right? How do we do that? So I'll give you an example. Like ICU doctors working in COVID ICUs, they were put on PPEs, right? So PPEs are those equipments that we wear, and those equipments are very expensive. And in India, everything is expensive for us. So we do a lot of, thinking before we waste even a piece of cotton in an Indian hospital. So doctors were put on PPEs, and managements, and we came and we said, you know what, doctors, we're putting you on a PPE, and then when you get out of the PPE, it has to be thrown away. You have to take a full bath, and then again, if you have to come into PPEs, all that is just too expensive and it's too cumbersome, and also there is a risk of exposure for you. Instead, let's give you diapers. And this has happened. So there have been doctors who worn diapers so that they don't take loo breaks, bathroom breaks to go in between. And my own friends have, been through that. So hospitals rush to make protocols like these, which is so promising and is a happy thing. And now we know with some certainty what blood tests are to be done, what scans are to be done, and when exactly and to whom exactly should we do all these tests and scans to get the best outcome. We know with some certainty again what medicine should be used. What medicine should be used, when exactly should it be used, in what age group should it be used to get the best outcome. And at the speed of lightning, we are coming up with vaccines for the first time. Our own Indian companies are coming up with vaccines for the first time. So all this is definitely good news and promising news. So yeah, your question is, so what's the proof, doctor? You're saying wash your hands, take vaccines, and do this social distance. Don't go to your class if you're sick. Or what's the proof that all this is going to work? What's the proof that all your scientific thing is going to work? Well, as we say, the proof of the pudding lies in eating it. So look at this graph. If you don't understand anything from this graph, forget it. Don't try to look too deep into it. I'll explain it. So this graph shows what is called as under 5 mortality rate, which means if 1,000 children are born, Out of those 1,000 children, only so let's look at this. So in 1880, this number over here, and look up over here, look at this dot. It's a little over 500. What that dot means in this graph is this: in 1880, if 1,000 babies were born at a given point in time, only 500 of those 1,000 babies will live to celebrate their fifth birthday. And that to me is, in today's time, when we listen to that, it's almost unbelievable. It feels like a very dark fiction. It doesn't even feel like reality. So that was in 1880. And then somewhere around the 40s, 1950s, there's been a steady decline. And even before that, there's been a decline, but there's been a steady decline. And now in 2020, if 1,000 babies are born in India today, 30 of those babies may still not live to celebrate or live past their fifth birthday. Is that great? No, it's not. 30 babies out of 1,000 not living past their fifth birthday is still a tragedy. But is there an upside to this? Definitely yes. So somewhere between at this time where modern medicine was popularized and structured and was delivered to patients, we have been able to achieve this in India. So, and you might think that solutions to diseases and scientific solutions are complicated solutions, but they don't have to be. They can be very simple solutions. You know, when you look at this graph, you might be wondering what is happening to these babies that in 1880, 500 out of 1,000 babies had to die before the age of 5. What was happening to these babies? And if I tell you, in today's day, it is almost, it's so silly, because those problems were small problems like malaria, diarrhea, for heaven's sake, measles. Measles is just a small viral infection that causes rashes. So these were the infections that can be easily controlled, but these were the infections that were killing our babies. What are the solutions? Nothing complicated for malaria. And this is not something that I'm just saying, guys. So this is, medical fact proven. Mosquito nets, handing out mosquito nets, save people from malaria. Diarrhea, all of you know what ORS is. It's that electoral kind of solution that we drink to energize ourselves when we have loose stools, right? So for diarrhea, and a packet of ORS costs 5 rupees, less than 5 rupees. And in the government hospitals, it's given completely free of cost to hundreds of patients every single day. It can save lives. Measles vaccines, they're less than 200 rupees. And in the government, even that is given free of cost. It can save lives. That's how we managed to save from 500 to 30. That's how we managed to get from 500 to 30. That's how we managed to save lives. So scientific solutions needn't be complicated. And even in this, COVID-19 that we're talking about, even for this problem, the scientific solutions are very easy. So what should you do when you go back to schools? When schools reopen, doctor, what am I supposed to do? Let's think about practical solutions, because we can't be out of schools forever. We can't forever keep social distancing. So we need to look at practical solutions. First and foremost, when you go back to schools and colleges, there will definitely be a set of guidelines. Gone are those days when you think like breaking rules are cool. We're at a time and age where many of us are so well educated and so well read and so well connected to the rest of the world. Stick to those guidelines. It's cool to stick to guidelines. It's cool to follow protocols. So stick to those guidelines in your schools. Do as your schools require you to do. If you think something is not practical or not a viable solution, speak to your management about it. Speak to your teachers about it. I'm sure they'll understand. Second is coughing and sneezing etiquette. Like I already told you, sneeze into your elbow, sneeze into your clothes. Take off if you're sick. It's all right if you lose a couple of days of classes, or it's all right if you lose a day of work. Please take off if you're sick. Invest in your health. When I say invest in your health, I definitely don't mean just monetarily. I mean eat healthy, exercise well, vaccinate yourself, so that when a disease strikes, you are in the best of your health to take over the disease. So we're coming to the end of this very long lecture. So I wanted to end with this. I wanted to say it may be a matter of time before another pandemic or an epidemic strikes. But if you learn from a failure, you haven't truly lost. When we come out of COVID-19, we don't know when it's going to be. We don't know if it's going to be a tragedy, or if we are going to be at least slightly victorious in some way. But let whatever happen, when we come out of COVID-19 in the other end, we should have learned lessons. We should have learned lessons, and we should be working on preventing those things and taking care of all the repairs. I'd like to end by saying thank you and Jai Hind. And a special thanks to Professor Dr. Mani. He is the chairperson of the National Academy of Sciences of India. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Thanks to Chennai Mathematical Institute and especially Mr. Sripati, who put me on to this. And thank you, Mr. Anand Kurian, for your technical support.
Uh, Thank you, Dr. Vidya. And it was a wonderful ending when you said, if you learn from a failure, you have not lost. It's a wonderful idea. I think all of us should carry that, and it will be nice to follow the advice which she has given. And it is very nice again. Thank you once more. And now there will be question answer session.
And I'm unable to hear anybody.
Yeah.
Sir, you're speaking. Mani, sir, you
Yeah,
hear anything?
Vidya ma'am, could you please check your speakers again? We can hear Mani sir. Can you hear me? Vidya ma'am, can you hear me?
It doesn't look like.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm okay now. I can hear you.
You can hear us. All right. Participants, this is just to let you know, I have posted the Google form for your questions. You can just post the question that you have in the Google form, and we will present it here, and Dr. Vidya will answer these questions. Doctor, we'll wait for a couple of minutes when the questions come in.
Sure, sir.
Say, I appreciate the one last comment which you made. If you learned from a mistake, you haven't really lost. It's wonderful.
Thank you, sir.
I'm just waiting. I'll present my screen as soon as the this one comes in.
Are people still sending questions, sir?
Yeah, there will be. I've posted it on YouTube.
So if you all are listening to this, please feel free to ask any questions. Don't consider any question as silly or irrelevant. I think any question could be helpful if I answer that to not just you, to other people who might have similar queries.
Okay, we have a couple of questions. Let me just share my screen. Doctor, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. So I would appreciate if you just read it out also. Thank you.
Okay, so this person says, I once attended a webinar by a doctor back in July 2020 who quantified the contact time of COVID-19. He said that if we come within 6 feet of a person with COVID-19 and both him and I are not wearing a mask, then the probability is 99% that we will contract the virus within 10 minutes. On the other hand, if we both are wearing masks, then the contact time increases to 30 minutes. Is it correct? Is this roughly the way it works? If not, do you know what research says on this topic to quantify how long it will take for us to contact the virus when we come in contact with someone who has the virus? Okay, that's a lovely question. So it's true. It's absolutely true, because forget the time and the quantity of time, but just imagine as we speak, right? As we speak, there are small droplets of saliva that are like literally splattering out, to be vivid about that, literally splattering out, and sometimes we can't even see it because it's really tiny drops. And imagine it's all about probability. Someone is standing close to me is obviously going to come in contact with that those small droplets, so to say. And someone who's standing further than maybe 10 feet apart is not going to. If I'm wearing a mask and if the other person is also wearing the mask, then the probability again is cut down to much shorter. About the time, yes, the time that you are mentioning, 10 minutes and 30 minutes, is roughly what scientists and doctors believe. But then again, see, all this is part of a research. So what does research mean? Is when we take some data, we look at it, and we can come out with a probability. It doesn't mean that that is the absolute gospel truth, that it has to be 10 minutes. So does that mean, doctor, then if I suspect that my friend has COVID, can I just stand next to him and talk to him without a mask for like 8 minutes and maybe I won't catch it? No, you may still catch it. But the probable time is 10 minutes and 30 minutes. Okay, so the second question is, we know that many vaccines for COVID-19 are in the pipeline. Considering that a regular vaccine takes 5, 10, or even 15 years before brought out to safety to the public, how safe will it be to take these vaccines and that are developed in just a year or so without a large group of people wouldn't a large group of people choose not to take it? So to this question, if I have to be absolutely honest, I've had the same doubt, because when you read something like that, it's terrifying, because we're giving vaccines to our own children, people we love, dear ones. And this doubt, not just about the vaccine, every time someone, and this happens a lot because now we are at the age where conspiracy theories are brewing out, every single second, that will this doctor steal my kidney, will this medicine actually start taking over my DNA and all of that. There are just way too many conspiracy theories, and there is generally a doubt we all have in our mind about these pharma giants, they're making money out of us and all of this, and I completely understand that. But we have to put faith in the goodness and the humanity of our governments and the doctors and scientists testing these vaccines. All of these vaccines are going to come out only if our government approves it after human trials. And the question is not whether, or to me, the bigger question is not whether I am going to be protected 100% by the vaccine, or 98 or 95% by the vaccine. To me, the bigger question is, am I going to be, adversely affected by the vaccine? And I genuinely have faith that the government and the medical fraternity is not going to let that happen. Because if we were to get the vaccines, the first people who are going to get the vaccines are doctors like me and my family. So if the question is, can research be done like that? Yes. And at any point in time, now we're saying it might come, by 2021, by mid 2021, even say Feb 2021, a company finds out that it has adversely affected somebody. Adversely affected means that the person who's got the vaccine has got a very bad side effect. Then they are going to stop it at that, and we are going to start, researching more on technology. That's how it works. So, which was the first pandemic in the world, ma'am? I honestly don't know the answer to that, but the most recent pandemic was the Spanish flu 1918. And before that, I don't know if probably I think a smallpox. Maybe you guys can go look it up. Yeah, smallpox can be considered a pandemic. So, ma'am, why is it taking so much time to create a vaccine for COVID-19? It's not, it's not taking so much time. In fact, we are taking much lesser time than it would normally take to create vaccines, because we have to understand, when we give vaccine is something given into the body of a completely normal, healthy human being, right? So we don't want to give something to that healthy human being in the name of protecting him from a disease and then give him something much more deadlier. That would be a disaster. So that's why we are taking as long as we are taking. It could take a lot longer. So be happy that it's at least not taking that long. Fifth question is, washing of hands reduces the chance of COVID-19. Then why is there a gradual increase in the number of cases day by day? Why is this method not considered as a second option until unless the vaccine is found? I don't understand that question, sir. Can Anand sir or Mani sir or someone explain that question to me?
Uh,
Any idea
no,
what?
I'm not able to also understand it well.
All right. So he says washing of hand reduces the chance of COVID-19. Then why is there a gradual increase? I'll take the question in parts. Why is there an increase in the number of cases? So let's say you go into a battlefield. Is a helmet going to help you? Yes. Is an armor going to help you? Yes. Is a sword going to help you? Yes. Is are all these things going to help you? Is a weapon going to help you? Yes. But does that mean we say, no, your helmet is not as important as your armor, which isn't as important as a gun? No. When you are facing something, you have to do the best you can from every possible angle. So why are the cases increasing? Because the honest truth is that hand washing is definitely going to help, but the disease spreads through, through the breath, and it's a respiratory infection. So you basically breathe the virus in. So if you're going to go without a mask and just wash your hands, it's not going to work. If you just wear a mask and don't wash your hands, again, it's not going to help. So it has to, any problem. That's what I was talking to you about right from the beginning. You have to look at the broader angle of the problem, and you must combat it from all angles. So there's no, in my opinion, there's no such thing as a second option or first option. Washing your hands is very simple. Wearing a mask is very simple. Do all of that. And when the vaccines come out, take the vaccine also. Number 6 is which type of mask is the most effective, as there are different types of masks being produced in this pandemic. Yes, that's a good question. So when you wear a mask, normally doctors wear like what is called a 2 or 3 ply mask, which is like basically 3 layers and a mask containing 3 layers of a material. So it helps in 2 ways. When you speak, the droplets don't come out. When somebody else speaks or coughs or sneezes, the droplets, are caught by the first layer. That's how it works. There are a lot. So N95 masks, they call it N95 because it's 95% protective. If you're a doctor, you probably know this answer already. But if you are the general public and you just want to go out to the supermarket, or you work in a retail store and you want to know how you'll manage that, you can just wear any of the 2 ply or 3 ply masks available, surgical masks, or you can go in for an N95 mask. Anything is all right. As long as both parties are wearing masks, it shouldn't be a problem. Okay, so due to COVID-19, many children have been affected by multi-system inflammatory disease. What led to causes syndrome in children? Okay, um, factually, this is incorrect because due to COVID-19, many children have not been affected by multi-system inflammatory syndrome. It's a very so out of the children who have contracted COVID-19, there are like so many children who have contracted COVID-19. A very, 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 very small population, which you can just count with your fingers, have gotten this problem. What is this problem basically? Multi-system inflammatory syndrome. Forget the long sentence. So when when coronavirus enters your nose and goes into your lungs, for adults, what we see most commonly is that it affects the lungs. But for children, we notice that it causes like a systemic inflammation, which means if I have to put it in layman terms, like most of your organs and your body is responding to that illness, and hence there is a lot of inflammation all over. That's called a systemic inflammation. Having said that, has anybody died out of it? We know that in India, we don't have that yet. If a kid has died out of it. So I can't see the questions anymore. Is there another question? Even if we find vaccines for COVID-19, does the vaccine given to infected people vary from the vaccine that will be given to a healthy person for preventive measures? Okay. So vaccine means, you know what a vaccine is. A vaccine is not a medicine. A vaccine is nothing. For example, I'll tell you, say there is the polio vaccine. So what exactly is in that vaccine? You take those drops, right? The polio drops, that is a polio vaccine. What exactly is in that vaccine is this. There are polio viruses, real polio viruses that are taken, and they are weakened. They are weakened to such an extent that even if it enters our body, it's not going to cause a disease. It's not going to kill us. But when that weak polio virus enters your body, you take drops and it enters your body, what's going to happen is your body is going to identify, hey, look, I think it's a virus and it's come to attack us. And your body is going to, your immunity is going to be on full alert, and it's going to produce all these immune cells needed to attack that weak polio virus. So it will definitely kill that polio virus, but there is such a thing as immune memory. So your immunity is going to remember how it had that attack, and how exactly it was able to kill that weak polio virus. So next time, if you do get to encounter a real polio virus, which is not from a lab but a real polio virus, your immunity already knows how to kill. So that's how a vaccine works. Coming back to your question, you're not going to give that to a person who already has the disease. Vaccines can only prevent by making your immune systems remember the fight. So it's not going to be given to people who already have the infection. It's going to be given to people so that they don't get the infection. That's how it works. Ma'am, when we wash our hands with soap, does the virus in our hands stick to the soap? Okay, so that's a great question. So this is how a soap works. And so when you put soap onto your hands, basically it's a very slimy thing. More than a chemical thing, it's a slimy thing. So it just, washes the thing off your hand. Will it stick to the soap? To be very honest, I don't know. Which maybe we should start. We should only use liquid hand washes. Will it stick to the soap? Well, soaps are supposed to be self-cleansing, is what we thought. So when you rub off the layer of a soap, you're supposed to rub off the layer of soap into your hands and wash it off. I don't know. That's a very good question. Thank you for asking me that question. I'll go and look into it. All right, let's move on to the next question then. Ma'am, like you said, many companies are close to finding vaccines for coronavirus, but my doubt is that how do you say that before even the vaccine is invented? I mean, how do we get to know if they are close or not fine? That's true. When they say they're close, they mean that they've finished testing it on animals and everything, and now they're going to test. They are testing it on humans, and as of now, there are no glitches. But you never know. Who knows? 2 months down the line, they may say that. But they mean that, see, they've done this. So these companies have a lot of vaccines. So they have done vaccines for other illnesses at this point in time that they are in. For example, say like they've done the same testing for example, a chickenpox vaccine. They just mean that we are so close that from now on, I don't think anything else can go wrong. So most probably we will be able to produce enough vaccines to in order to give it or sell it at this at this particular month or a couple of months from now. The current record for a fully functional vaccine is held by the vaccine for Ebola virus, with a time of 5 years since the first case. How is it possible to develop a vaccine within such a short time? Of approximately 1 year for COVID-19. Well, there can be two reasons. Two reasons is that not every single vaccine company or scientist in the world is working full time on an Ebola vaccine, as opposed to how much time they're putting into engineering a corona vaccine, mainly because of the sheer magnitude. Think about it from the point of view of a vaccine company. In a pandemic is going on, and so many people are being affected by corona to such an extent that economies have to be put on hold. There is a lot of overtime research, and there are, like, a big army of scientists and doctors working on finding out a vaccine, which could be one reason why we are able to come up with it much more faster than, for example, the Ebola vaccine. Are there more questions, Mr. Anand?
Yeah.
Okay, so Pfizer, Moderna are confident that their vaccines are solid, 95% plus. Is it not then better to use them instantly and save as many lives as possible now, as this will reduce the exponential effect? It may not be perfect, but since time it is a key factor in such a situation, isn't it beneficial to bet on these promising vaccines? What do you, as a doctor, think? As a doctor, and this is the basis of modern medicine as we know it, everything depends on research. And every single medicine that we give you, including the paracetamol, may have a side effect, but we're always weighing the risk to the benefit. And if the benefit outweighs the risk, it is delivered to a patient. So this is what we have to know, that everything is evidence based medicine. So if there is evidence enough for PIPSA, right now at this moment as we speak, if they have evidence enough that they are going to be doing justice by giving it and saving people, they will be. If they're not, we shouldn't rush them, is my point of view as a doctor. Ma'am, we are hearing of new strains of COVID. Is it real? If yes, how does it affect the people? So viruses keep like I told you, right? So these strains are nothing but evolution. Like even in our flu vaccines, there are like, sorry, flu influenza. There are different strains, and they do keep evolving. There won't be so there is no like major difference. So is it going to shift from a respiratory viruses to some other kind of a virus where the disease itself is going to be extremely different? Probably not. You don't have to, probably not. It's just small variants, so it could be slightly more severe, slightly less severe, those kind of things, which can be left up to the doctors. We will treat you accordingly. It is true that there can be different strains.
Ma'am, as of now, I think that's it. If any other questions come in, I think I will, yeah, as of now, that's it.
All right. Thank you so much, sir.
Mani, sir,
Yeah, can I?
could you switch on your video as well, sir?
I have done that. Thank you very much, Dr. Vidya. It was just a very nice talk, very coherent, and very well built, as you seem to have a lot of experience at this young age. And let me wish you all the very best in your preschool, which you're co-founding now.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir. And thank you, Anand, sir. Thank you, all the panelists, for being here and giving me this opportunity. Thank you for listening to this. I hope you all learned a thing or two from this.